Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Pony Club Australia's member webinar, Emergency Preparedness with Horses. I'm Emma Legrand, and I'm your host for tonight. It's really good to have you all here with us. So we all know, hopefully, that when disaster strikes, things can change in an instant. And having a plan ready to go can really make the difference, not just for you, but for your family and, of course, your horses. So tonight is all about making sure you feel prepared no matter where you live in Australia. I'm really excited to introduce our guest speaker, Amelia Guest. Amelia lives in Victoria and she has over 10 years of frontline firefighting experience, both as a volunteer and a professional. She was on the ground during the Black Summer fires of 2019 and 20, and she knows firsthand what it's like when emergencies hit. On top of that, she's been a horse person her whole life, more than 21 years across racing, endurance, dressage, breeding, and more. Some of you might also know her as a long-time member of Tullamarine Pony Club. So now, while Amelia's background is Victorian, she's designed tonight's presentation for all Pony Club families across the country. Different states face different risks, whether they're bushfires, floods, storms, or all of the above. But the practical tips and strategies you'll hear tonight are relevant no matter where you are. So here's what we're going to cover. Why every horse owner needs an emergency plan, some simple practical steps to get your horses ready for bushfire and other emergencies, lessons learned from real life responses, and some state-based resources you can tap into straight away. Amelia's going to take us through an interactive session that will run for about 40 minutes, and then we'll have around 20 minutes for Q&A. You can send your questions through at any time through the Q&A function. Don't wait until the end. We'll cover as many as we can. And just to let you know that after tonight, you'll receive a take-home flyer with links to state and territory resources, so you'll have everything in one place to follow up on. So let's get started. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to our presenter, Amelia Guest.
Hello, I've just clicked the wrong button. I don't know how to get rid of that. Oh, okay. Can everyone see can you see my screen?
I can.
Perfect. I am assuming everyone else can, I hope. So thank you, Emma, for the introduction. My name is Amelia. I'm from obviously the CFA and Fire Rescue Victoria in Victoria. Everything I've done, so CFA have provided a fair bit of support tonight. So everything we've put together is CFA branded, but I'm going to adapt it as much as I can. I can't put everyone else's logos on because I don't represent them. So I'm not allowed to use their logos. But yeah, so everything's CFA branded, but we're trying to make this relevant for everyone. And I hope that it will be helpful for everyone. So who am I? Emma's done a very, very kind introduction. But yeah, so I'm a firefighter in Victoria. I hold a lot of roles within CFA and in Fire Rescue Victoria. Spent a lot of time on the front line, but I also grew up with horses as well. Why am I here? And I suppose this is something I pursue as much as I possibly can. When I became a firefighter, I was really shocked to learn just how much I could do to keep my horses safe in an emergency. We all see it on Facebook and in the groups, you know, who can come and evacuate my horses? What do I do? All at the last minute. I was really shocked to learn just how much you can do in preparation and just how much of an impact that can have. So I wanted to come here tonight to hopefully empower everyone here to prepare their horses for emergencies, so you can go in confidently knowing that you've done everything you can to get your horses ready, and really just how easy it is to have a good preparation and a good plan to keep your horses safe. So we have a slider which we were playing with before, and apparently I didn't reset that. But if anyone is able to use their phones to scan the QR code, it will take you to this Slido to fill out. And the first question is just to get an idea of where everyone's at. The first question is, do you have an emergency plan for your horses? So hopefully some people are able to either jump on at slido.com or use the QR code. Good. Amazing. I'll just give that like a minute or two. We're going up and down. I'm not sure where we're going to end up. We might end up in the nose, but 2 of the nose were Emma and I when we were playing with it the other week. We're getting there. Okay, we're at 60-40 and we've been still for a second or two. Oh, we're getting there. Okay, so it's almost like it's a pretty close spread, and I'm really, really happy to hear that 42% of you so far have an emergency plan. So I'm hoping that we can hone it. Hoping you still got lots to take out of tonight. And for those of us that don't have a plan, this is an amazing first step to get there. There is a Q&A. Awesome. And some people are putting in the chat. Ooh. I don't know how to get rid of that. Okay, sorry, I've jumped through the things. Okay, awesome. 57% and 43%, perfect. So the next question we have is, what are the risks that face you and your horses? So obviously we've got people from all over Australia here today, and your Slido should have jumped to this next question that you can answer. Yeah, what are the risks that you are aware of that you face where you live? Awesome. So yeah, there's a lot of fire. Almost everyone's susceptible to a storm, especially in Australia. A lot of bush and grass fire. And this is a really good reflection and a first step, even to sit here and go, what are actually the hazards that are where I live, or where my horses live too. Cool. So there's obviously a few people from up north in cyclone country. Flood, fire, storm. Awesome. And we've got one more that you can type in whatever you want or whatever you are hoping to get out of tonight. Feedback's really helpful because I can talk for days and weeks about horses and bushfires. And so if you can provide something specific you're looking for, that'd be awesome to help hone exactly what I need to talk about tonight. Yeah. Yeah, awesome. These are awesome questions. There's so many coming through. How to best prepare for fire, things I haven't considered. Yes, hopefully I will definitely be going over things we haven't considered. More help making sure the plan actually works. Perfect, that's what we're looking for. A better understanding of how to prepare for an emergency with my horses. Amazing. What do I need to consider? Awesome. If you can't transport your horses away / get stuck, what do you do? That's a huge one because lots of people, not necessarily, they can't even transport all of their horses. So that's amazing. We'll go over that. That's property preparation, general information, strategies. I love this one. Strategies to help myself and my club. I love, and one of the big points that come out of a lot of fires is people that are engaged with their community, a local community around them, do a lot better. So that's amazing that you're not just thinking, that you're thinking about everyone.
Amelia, we've had a question come in on the Q&A from
Yep.
Linda. What to do if you're trapped?
Yes, that's a good one. We'll go through that in a lot
Mm.
more detail. Yeah, so ideally, we're going to take all the steps that we can to not get trapped. But there's lots of steps you can take if you are in that sort of situation. More information on safety. Yeah, how to decide when it's safer than moving them. That's an awesome question too. You, if it's too late to leave, they're safer to be left. So if it's smoky, if you're under emergency evacuation warning, if the fire's within a couple of kilometers, your horses are far better in their paddock than they are on the road, because fires can travel really rapidly, and the worst place you can be is on the road. When to transport my horses and where. Also, am I going through that? Organize plans for emergencies, more practical knowledge. Oh my gosh, there's so many things. Yes. Okay, these are all amazing. And I'm really happy with the quality of responses here, guys. Like, there's so many people who are already doing really good thinking and planning. Treat our horses. How do I set up my place as an evacuation center? That's really generous. Is it safe to get them in the dam, to get in the dam? Okay, amazing. So I'm going to hopefully come back and remember all of these, because I think my slides address almost all of them. Is it safe to get in a dam? Your dam is, it comes up in the slides, it is the last resort. Comes with significant risk, but it is better than being in a paddock with grass or something like that. So your dam is your absolute last resort, but it is an option if there's nothing else you can do. What do I do if I can't transport my horse? Amazing. Okay. So I've got a good idea of where everyone's at. So I just wanted to start with, as well, congratulations for coming, and for already thinking. So you guys are already 10 steps ahead. You're already thinking about your fire plans. Everyone goes, it's not going to happen to me. Don't create a plan. When I was 16, my plan was, I'm going to ride all my horses to safety. I'll ride them, I'll lead them, I'll do whatever I can. This is your first step to making safe decisions and better decisions than 16-year-old me was making. So thank you for coming, and I really hope we can address all of those questions today. And we've got plenty of time for questions at the end too. Okay, so this, and this is sort of what's referenced in quite a few of the questions. This is what we're looking to avoid. This is what we don't want to see. I never want to see one of these articles again. We're talking about a rider fighting for her life, and I believe she has recovered quite well after a freak accident while saving horses from a bushfire. There are 3 people who died in Western Australia who were trying to save horses. So this is what we are trying to avoid, and hopefully I can give you some steps tonight to not be in this position. There's so many steps we can take before we get to this position, and I never want to see one of these articles again. I want everyone to hopefully be able to make a good decision. So where do we start? So first I'm going to start with these questions, and maybe it's worth taking a photo of them or writing them down. And as we go through each of the bits that we're going to learn, you can go back and reference these questions and make it more relevant to you. So if there was an emergency, if there was a fire, flood, cyclone, whatever emergency comes up, are you planning to stay or are you planning to go? Where and how do you get your emergency information? And that's something to be really important and really aware of, because that's also going to initiate what is your trigger to leave, or what is your trigger to activate your fire plan, your emergency plan. So your emergency information sources are really important, and your triggers are really important, because there's no point in saying, I'm going to leave early, and you're not knowing that there's a fire coming, because then you're not leaving early. Are you going to evacuate your horses? So for some people, that's really practical. Some people, we have 2-horse horse float. You have friends down the road that's in a way lower risk area, and you don't work, so you can evacuate every day there's a high fire danger day. For most people, that's less practical. And so we'll talk about preparing your property for if you can't evacuate your horses. So the next step is, what preparations will you make for your property prior to an emergency? And what preparations have you made if your horses are left on your property? And I can't emphasize enough that prepare your property anyway. Even if you plan to leave, you never know what could happen. Your float could break down, your car could break down, you could be not home when the emergency happens. I've been to a fire recently where this poor girl had gone to the general store. She had gone 5 minutes down the road, and by the time she came back, the roads were closed. There was no fire when she left, and the roads were closed before she got back. So it's really important to have your property prepared anyway, because you never know when something's going to happen. And if you plan to leave, where are you going? How will you get there? And that was a question that came up a bit earlier, and we'll go through some options for that as well. So another thing to consider, so these are all our sort of steps to consider. Horses are really good at avoiding fire given the opportunity. And I have put an asterisk there. This asterisk is, there's always exceptions to the rule. There's always the strange horse, the horse that I am patting in this photo. That's the one that wouldn't survive in the wild, that wouldn't make it without tedious care and affection. There are also, we'll talk about later, stabled horses, horses that have a real like for their stable. They need a bit more help than most paddocked horses. But yeah, given the right opportunity, horses are really good at avoiding fire and other emergencies. Horses hear at higher frequencies than we do. So a crowning fire, so that we're talking about, Black Saturday type bushfire up in the top of the trees, it actually makes quite a low frequency sound, and it won't affect a horse as much as a grass fire will. A grass fire, a scrub fire that's running down the bottom of the bush is far more distressing, and there's significant discrepancies between the sounds. So some people talk about relying on their horse's behavior as to whether, they think it's a risk or not. It's really, really unreliable. Horses are going to be far more affected by a grass fire. It also means that they can hear things that we can't. So handling horses, loading horses, and floating late is really dangerous. If you're threatened by fire, if it's smoky, if there is a fire within a couple of kilometers from you, or if you're under emergency warning or a too late to leave warning, it's too late to be floating your horses. They are far better left where they are, especially if you've got a paddock prepared for them. I have horses on 40 acres. They come when they're called. They are kids' ponies. They come when they're called. And a fire started over the road from my house once, and they were in their fire safety paddock. I couldn't get near them. Their paddock is not very big. It's about an acre, and I couldn't get anywhere near my horses that come when they're called. So things are really different in an emergency, and you need to be prepared for that. You need to be prepared that they might have to stay where they are. The other thing that comes with severe weather and elevated fire danger days is high winds. I know my horses are far less reasonable when it's extremely windy. We're talking about 30 to 80k winds gusting over 100 kilometers an hour. I'm sure most horses of people in the audience are not as far less reasonable on those sorts of days. So we have to consider that already we're starting at a disadvantage. What are your local risks? So this is your next question you need to ask. Are you in a floodplain? Are you in bushland? Are you limited by really narrow roads in and out? And a really great way to establish this is if you have a look on your phone and you have a look on Google Maps, switch it to Google Earth and have a look at the creeks near you, the bushland near you. You'll be quite surprised how close bushland is to a lot of places in the country. And I was really surprised the first time I looked. I can see the mountains in the distance, but actually the bush starts less than a kilometre away. Local vegetation, really important when we talk about fire behaviour and spotting. And we talk about local fuel types, which on the left, we have a ribbon bark, and a ribbon bark is found on gum trees. That bark can burn for long periods of time. It can be sucked up into clouds, and it can spot for 10 kilometers in front of a fire front. The stringy bark on the right provides really high density spotting behavior. It won't travel as far, but it is really intense and it's really intimidating. So it's really, really good to have a good idea of what is around you, how close things are, and what basically what risks you face. Another great consideration, so the horse on the left is my horse. That's my fire safety paddock. It's obviously spring at that time, but my paddock's obviously already well eaten out, and I would have gone even shorter if I could. But if you think the rule of thumb is a flame height in the grassland is 3 to 5 times the height of the fuel. And so, you know, even the fuel out here, you go 3 times that, it's probably at about here on this little pony. Where it compared to this horse, 3 times the height of the fuel, and Phalaris burns way hotter than most grasses. We're sort of looking, even on a moderate day, we're sort of looking at 1, 2, 3. And so this is the difference you can have. This is a phenomenal difference already in the horse's safety. And I realize that this grass is green, but it's already gone to seed. On a hot day, that will burn, and it will burn just fine. And we talk about flood preparation. I love the preparation of these properties. These guys have done an amazing job. You can see all of these animals sheltering up on their flood mound. It's obviously a fenced flood mound. So this is something really important to consider. Floods don't come in as quickly, but they last for a lot longer. And good preparation is key in all of these things, to be honest. And Emma, I can't see the chat popping up. So if there's any questions, just let me know. So we've sort of considered what are the risks around us. And now we'll sort of go through the steps of how to prepare your horse for fire or emergency. I went through and did all of these slides for fire, flood, cyclone, thunderstorm and whatnot. And it turned out to be way too many slides. So I've scaled it back to just fire, and we'll adapt each of them to all the different emergencies that we could be looking at. It's a lot of information, and especially if it's the first time you're looking at this sort of information, it can be a lot. And so if you only take, you know, one thing away from today, let it be this slide. Have a plan for your horses. Even if it's not the best plan, if it's not the most thorough plan, having a plan is your first step. Late evacuations with horses will put them and yourself at risk, and a well-prepared area is a far safer option than a late evacuation. So for a fire, we're looking at a large, well-grazed area where they can move freely and with a supply of water. So they obviously need water. It's going to be hot. It's going to be windy. For flood mounds, like pictured in the last few slides, or the highest paddock available, we're far safer to leave your horses there than be stuck on the road with them in the float. And for severe weather, a clear, well-fenced paddock and a reliable, sturdy shelter if available. So there's plenty of cyclone rated shelters, and it depends what sort of weather you're looking at where you live, but a reliable shelter for your environment. We always say remove all gear from horses and keep them contained on your property. So we'll go through that in more detail. Remove all gear from your horses. Things can melt, things can get caught on things. You're better off leaving them to their own devices. Have an emergency kit, and I've got all the details for the emergency kit coming up later. And be prepared to be self-sufficient if you decide to stay, or be prepared for your horses to be self-sufficient because you may be unable to return home for up to 5 days. So that might mean a huge water trough in their paddock. That might mean a round bale. That might mean whatever that looks like for you, but help them be self-sufficient for 5 days. So how to prepare your property. And this is the caveat, and this is the reason that we say the horses are better left at home if it's too late to leave. Horses are quite good at avoiding fire if they are given enough space to move freely and there is minimal vegetation. So a horse in a wide open paddock in grassland where the fuel's eaten down, like in that photo of my horse, they've got a really good chance to get through it just fine. They will run around, they will run from the fire for as long as they can, and when they can't run anymore, they'll turn back and run through it and shelter on the burnt ground. Done. If they are horses that are regularly stabled or love their stables, they may return to their stable if panicked. And this is the caveat. If their stable is not fireproof, cyclone rated, above the flood levels, whatever it is, if it's not prepared for the emergency, they will need to be locked away from their stable. We've sort of overridden their natural instincts by stabling them in some instances. So make sure they can't return to a place of comfort if it's not safe. So we want to prepare a large, well-grazed paddock, or again, the flood mounds, or again, the open paddocks. And, you know, a large, well-grazed paddock is going to overlap with an open paddock, could overlap with a flood mound, and it could just be one paddock. Obviously, it also depends on your herd dynamics and your horses. So if your horses aren't used to living together, maybe you have 2 paddocks, maybe you have 3 paddocks. It's whatever is manageable for you, and whatever is going to keep all of your horses safe.
We do have a question on that, Amelia, about opening adjoining paddocks, whether you should open the gates.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if that works for you, you can do a series of smaller paddocks, of adjoining paddocks, as long as it's still on your property. That's also a great option. Paddocks that are familiar to them too is one of the best things that you can do. So yeah, absolutely open adjoining paddocks if they are well managed as well. And yeah, whatever space you think they'll be most comfortable in. Does that answer your question?
I think that answers the question, yes.
And manage fuel around your property. So mow / overgraze poison or whippersnip around your fences and assets to keep the direct flame contact away from them. Really importantly, consider your hay storage. So you really want to keep your hay and food safe, but you want to prevent it from being a hazard to your house or your horses if it does catch on fire. So maybe a separate shed that's not too close to your home, or whatever possible option you have, because hay is going to be really important in the aftermath to keep roughage up to your horses. And ensure sufficient access for fire trucks, which often gets overlooked. This is my fire truck from my little brigade. We need to fit through your gates. We need to fit under the trees, and we need to be able to turn around. If we can't do that, we're not coming in the property. Fire trucks are 3.5 meters wide minimum. They're minimum 4 meters high and 7.1 meters long. That's the clearance that we want to get in. And they're heavy too. So consider, you know, some people have bridges or whatnot. These are all important factors. And this is not just for your horses, this is for your whole property. Considerations. So a lot of the information online goes through, you know, those points that I've been through, but if we're talking more horsey, more niche information, when we talk about a large enough paddock for your horses to run, that's really subjective. I have a whole heap of thoroughbreds. They need a lot more space than 5 Shetlands do. Enough room for them to run around and feel comfortable that they are making space, they are getting things done, and they can shelter from the fire. Enough paddocks to keep herd dynamics amicable. You don't want to be putting your stallions in with your mares every time there's a fire, or every time you're enacting your emergency plan. So you obviously have to keep that in the forefront of your mind, and that keeps things more manageable as well. Paddocks that are familiar are best. They know the paddock, they know where the water is, they know where the shelter is, and they're comfortable there. And it also really helps to, obviously, for them to graze it. It's free for them to graze it. They've got to eat somewhere anyway. You may as well overgraze a paddock that they're familiar with, that they can shelter in. Having reliable and resilient water source, and this is true for all of the possible outcomes, but you want to clear fuel from around your trough, so make sure you're doing good whippersnipping or whatever. I know it's different names in different states. Keep the grass low, have multiple water options. So that's what I do. I always have more than one. I'll go even just put a barrel out in the paddock with water, because, you know, maybe that one doesn't get affected this time. And larger troughs will last longer if the hoses are melted. So don't rely on pumps. You can't rely on your necessarily water supply. So a large trough with approximately 5 days of water for hot days would be your best option. Or at the same token, for cold days, for flood, you might take days before you can get back to your horses. Mature trees are not the enemy. Mature trees with 2 meters clear from their trunk to the first bit of leaves. They can provide shelter from the sun. Obviously we need shelter from the sun on hot days, but they can also provide shelter for ember attack. They can filter embers and be a really good asset in your paddocks. Not so much if you're talking cyclone or severe thunderstorm weather, they might end up a hazard. But if there's plenty of room that the horses can get away from it, I'm sure that's fine too. Structures provide shelter from radiant heat. So if you've got, if your paddock is on the leeward side of your house, from where the direction fires normally come from, or you've got stables, sheds, whatever, those are amazing to have near the paddock to provide shelter from radiant heat. Bare ground, such as arenas or loafing corners, can provide essential cool ground to stand on after a fire. And dams are great, even when they're empty, they're great in your fire safety paddock, because they're going to provide some clear ground and possibly even some mounds of dirt that the horses can shelter behind. And obviously good fencing is essential. I'm not going to get through all these slides. Enacting
Amelia, we've had a question about actually using an arena
yes.
as a potential safe place during.
Yeah, absolutely. So it obviously depends on the size of your arena. First and foremost, it depends on the size of your horses. I know my arena is in my fire safety paddock. I've just removed the fences from around it, but it's definitely a great spot if it's big enough, and that depends on your horses. I'm sure a large arena is great for 5 ponies or whatnot. Whether you can open your arena to an adjoining paddock and have both of them, that might be a great option too. Enacting a fire plan. So this is what I talked about before. You need to think about what your triggers might be. Same with flood, cyclone, everything. Is your trigger that the fire danger is extreme tomorrow? Is your trigger that there is a flood warning in place? You need to establish your trigger, and then so you know when you're ready to enact your fire plan. If your plan is to leave, the safest option is to leave the night before or the morning of the day of elevated fire danger, severe weather, flood, and whatnot. That is what we consider leaving early. If your plan is to stay or to leave your horses, you need to move them to their safety paddock, their designated safer place, the night before or the morning of, same thing. Remove all rugs and accessories from your horses. Ensure their tails and feathers are short or secured. This is more relevant to fire, obviously. But tails and feathers for Clydesdales and Welshies and all that sort of stuff can linger. They're a lot more susceptible to flame if a horse has to run through flame. So make sure they are short or secured. So some people tie tails up. Obviously, showies don't want to get rid of their tails. Ensure horses have enough water for 5 days, and make sure they have enough hay or other roughage for 5 days. It's really hard, you can't stop a hay bale from catching on fire, but we're doing the best that we can with the situation that's given to us. If a fire arrives and you are unable to leave prior to the fire, shelter in a well-prepared property until the fire front has passed. Horses are far more resilient to radiant heat than we are. You don't want to be outside with them. You don't want to be interfering in what they are doing. You need to look after yourself. If your property isn't suitable, a neighbour's property, a private bunker or designated community fire refuge, and this is about getting to know your local area, these are all options for you. Someone asked about a dam before, so we have last resort options as well. These include a bushfire place of last resort, which are all across Australia, I believe, in high-risk towns. A stationary car in a clear paddock. So these are all places you don't want to be, but they are last resort places. A ploughed paddock or a body of water. This does not include a water tank. Please note these options carry an extremely high risk to your safety, but they are last resort options. And ensure you have appropriate PPE on. So I have a kit at my house for my mum, who's not a firefighter, and it basically has this sort of stuff in it. Natural fibers, we're looking to cover all exposed areas. Radiant heat can be really well blocked by natural fibers, jeans, cotton, long sleeve. You want goggles on, it's going to be really smoky. A hat on to keep your hair safe, and sturdy, thick boots and wool or cotton socks. These are the signs that you're looking for when you're looking for a bushfire neighbourhood safer place. They might look slightly different across the states, but I believe they were meant to be all changed to the same because we're going to the same emergency warning system. They are not a no risk area, but they are a better option if you don't have an option. After the fire front has passed. So if you had to shelter wherever you ended up, if you had to shelter from the storm, if you had to shelter from the floods coming in, after the danger has passed and when it is safe to do so, you can move outside and check your horses. Move them to cool ground if they haven't already, and the horses should have moved themselves. But what a lot of people don't realize is heat from after a fire can actually induce laminitis. So immediately they need to be moved to cool ground. The same goes for if they haven't moved, if your flood mound wasn't fenced, they haven't moved to higher ground, do what you can to get them to a safe location. You can apply first aid until you can see a vet. Any first aid should be anti-inflammatory. You're talking about cool water on burns. You're talking about standing horses in cool buckets of water if they've been standing on hot ground. And even if you think your horse is fine, call a vet as soon as possible. They'll triage you, they'll work out what they want to do, call a vet and get their advice. And recovery. So obviously we talked about needing water for at least 5 days. Horses are going to need a lot of hay to get through after a fire or a flood. The paddocks are either going to be burnt or not accessible. Consider thoughtful hay storage, obviously above flood levels or protected from fire. Horses with major injuries like burns will have significant protein and energy requirements. So it's good to have some pellets on hand, you know, some mare and foal pellets or something like that, just in case. A first aid kit, we've got more details in that later, but any first aid should be anti-inflammatory until you can speak to a vet. And impact, yeah, always call a vet. Here's our emergency kit. Take a photo of this because they don't produce them anymore, which is very annoying. But this is just a list of ideas and there's heaps more ideas online, which are great. But yeah, everyone take a photo of that. Cool. Flood preparation. So we talk mostly about horses, mostly about fires, but just some more specific things for floods. So it's about knowing your property and how well these people that know their property, obviously. Plan and develop around floodplains. Flood mounds are amazing refuges for your horses. Prepare evacuation plans. Obviously, you'd rather just not be there. Stockpile emergency supplies because, again, you could be without services or help for up to 5 days and have an emergency kit. So that would include your first aid kit. That would include stuff and food for yourself and food and safe drinking water for your horses. How do you know if there's a fire or emergency? So this is what we talked about, knowing your triggers. This is normally the last slide, but I think it's the most important slide. We have amazing technology. It's all great. But if we're talking about severe weather, we might be talking about phone lines down. We might be talking about internet not working. We might be talking about no power, batteries are dead. So first and foremost, use your sensors. And that's the most reliable source of information you have. These are all great. And I know they're all Victorian based, but every state has their own apps, their own hotlines. If you just Google your state, and I tested it before, if you just Google your state, it'll have the best apps and whatnot. Another great source of information is your family, your local friends, your gossip, whatever it is, however you talk to the people in your community. They might be the first person to tell you, hey, there's a fire. They might be the first person to tell you, hey, there's a flood coming through that we didn't expect. And emergency services use publicly posted images to track things like fires and floods. It's a really amazing resource, but obviously official sources are the most reliable. So fire danger ratings. This is now a nationwide system. I'm running out of time, so you can go through the fire danger ratings on the Australian Fire Danger Rating site, and it's the same for every state now. And these are normally what people use as their trigger to act. So those are our 4 ratings now. And through fire season, you should be checking your ratings daily. Obviously, Victoria is a CFA website, but every state has their own emergency services website. Download your emergency apps and monitor official sources to get this information. These warnings are nationwide as well now, and they're not just for fire. So we in Victoria used them recently for severe thunderstorms coming through. The advice, watch and act an emergency warning. And you can read exactly the details of each of these on your state's website. But yeah, so they're adaptable for every emergency that we may be faced with. Evacuation and community information, same thing. They're part of the same warning system. But again, we're prioritizing our own sensors, knowing that what we can see might be more reliable. And the other situation is you may be ahead of the warnings. So I had a fire start next to my property. It takes time to get warnings out. And so that's another reason that your own sensors are far more reliable. Use your sensors. This is a slide I put in for the points that I couldn't think of where else to put. So people say, you know, when you get through a fire or a flood and everything's fine, you're so lucky. A lot of people create that. A lot of people create their own luck by good preparation. We all know how to get good information at our fingertips. We can all access all of this information online. The thing I need to motivate you to do is to take steps to follow through. So in Victoria, we have a list of state control priorities. There's 6 priorities in Victoria as to what emergency services need to prioritise, and horses come in at number 5. So no one else is responsible. No one else, horses are not anyone else's priority, but as we know, they are some of our most valuable family members. So it's up to us to look after them. Emergency services are going to be flooded with everything else that needs to go on. The horses are at the bottom of the list. Be cautious of the online sources of information. If it doesn't match official messaging, there's probably a reason. There's plenty of companies that put out their own information. They might be trying to sell you something. They might just not understand the information properly. There's lots of great stuff out there, but make sure it matches with what your official state sources are. If you feel overwhelmed and know it's a lot of information, just take one step. Choose a paddock, or think about or chat with your family about your risks. Have a look at some information online. Just take one step. If you take one step, it's a lot easier to work through the next chunks of it. Intended actions don't necessarily reflect actual actions. So you might plan to evacuate, but it might not work out for you on the day. That doesn't matter, because you've had a plan, you've written it out, and that will help with your coping mentally after the fire or flood or whatever it is. Even if you didn't follow the plan exactly, you've already mentally prepared yourself by going through that process. Previous experience defending against a fire doesn't predict future success. The weather's getting far more volatile in Australia. Our extreme days are getting far worse. Just because you've been okay last time doesn't predict that you'll be okay this time. So having a good plan and having good preparations in place is really important. Things that help evacuation success are having a pre-planned area to go to and to being connected to the local horse community. So someone asked about that. Pre-planned areas could be if you're in a floodplain area that you know that's higher. So you're talking about friends properties, agistment properties. Lots of agistment properties open their gates to evacuees, race courses, and these are all, you know, last minute evacuation openers, but it's good to have them as a list as to, you know, who are likely to open their properties. If you live in the bushland, obviously you want to be looking for moving into grassland somewhere. And it's just about networking, about working with local people to work out where's a safer area than my property. And maybe if you live in grassland, or maybe if you live in a high area, your property is the safest option. So it's really about networking, and maybe your property is the one that is the safe place to go to. And that was something else someone asked. You can go and network, and that's the best place. Most emergency services don't have official evacuation areas for horses unless they're council owned. So it's networking, it's telling your local pony club, it's telling your local adult riders club, offering that to who you're comfortable offering that to. And that's a really generous thing to do. Human behavior is really important to understand too. So there's lots of stuff you can read online that helps you make an informed decision about what might happen and how you might respond. Having a buddy system is really, really good. Ask each other questions, talk about your plans together, ask, pick holes in each other's plans. So you start thinking about more of the intricacies than you might have thought of. Practicing your plans, which horses you'll take, which travel well together, which haven't traveled in a while. Have you ever loaded, how often do you load them at night? Because when a bushfire comes, it can go very dark very quickly, even though the fire's a long way away. All these things being practiced is a huge predictor of success when it comes to getting through an emergency. And be up to date on vaccinations, tetanus specifically, and any waterborne or airborne, mosquito-borne, especially diseases after floods. Being up to date on vaccinations is really important to help you get ahead of the game. And then don't have time to go through all that.
Oh, thanks, Amelia. That was such a great session with so many practical tips, and I'm sure everyone has got something they can take away, or it's certainly prompted some thoughts about things they want to find out more about. So we'll move into our Q&A now. So this is your chance to ask Amelia anything about that you wanted to delve into a little bit deeper.
Sorry, it was so quick. I didn't realize how long it was going to take. There's so much information in my head. It's really hard to.
We'll get through as many as we can in the last 15 or so minutes we've got remaining to us. So really good question from Linda about what do we need to have at our club grounds to assist others and ourselves?
Yeah, awesome. So I assume we're talking about if people are going to evacuate. Feed is a really, really big one. And I know we recommend that people have their own food, but feed is really, really important. Secure fencing and enough yards, shelter, water, just everything that you might need. People might be there for 5 days. So anything you can supply that obviously is not putting the club out as well would be really important. First aid, even if you've got out before the fire, who knows how the driver was driving, they're scared there's a fire, we might have some injuries. There's lots of those different resources, and especially a resource list, a phone number list, phone numbers for all the vets in the area, phone numbers for the local feed stores, who's really good hay runner in the area, those sorts of stuff would be really useful. What are the most important things to take for your horse in an evacuation? That's a really good question. So if you have a look at that emergency kit, that's got some of it, but that's a really personal question too. What does your horse normally use or normally need? Do they have any medication? Do they have a specific food that they like? Do they only like your water? Do they not drink when they're out competing? Those sorts of things are questions to ask. You definitely want a woolen rug because often after a really bad fire danger day, we're having a cool change. So often it's going to get cold. So you might need some warm rugs, or especially if it's flooding or storms. Some food, any medication that you need, and that first aid emergency kit is really important to take with you. Spare head collars. I know I arrived at a show, horse broke the lead rope as soon as we got there, and I went, oh shit. Oh bother, I should say. Yeah, so spare anything that you might need, and whatever you would normally use for your horse in a 5-day period. What would you recommend with managing fuel when growing grass for hay in the spring summer period? Yeah, so that's an awesome question. I assume your horses aren't on the hay paddock. So what I would say, and a lot of big cropping properties do, is they have a good fire break around your hay paddock. So if you have a good fire break and your horse's safety paddock is as far away as you can get it, obviously the hope is that you cut your hay before any fires happen, but again, Australia. So yeah, having a really good fire break, having your horse's safety paddocks as far away from your hay paddocks as possible. And yeah, it's really hard. It's a balancing act, because as it dries off, that's when you're cutting it, but as it dries off, it's ready to burn too. So yeah, Does that answer that question? I feel like,
No, I think it does.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
Have
it's
it,
a dicey one, and like my hay paddock's as far away from my horse paddock as I can get it too.
mm.
Uh, do you have any questions in particular?
I like the do rugs protect the horses from ember attacks? Like,
No. Um, no. Maybe in the oddest of circumstances, maybe, but no, we want to get everything off our horses, because rugs, more than anything, can trap embers or catch fire themselves. So horses are far better by themselves. I understand that thought, and I know that there's a company that makes fireproof rugs, but you just can't stop the embers from getting up under them. Um, and also, it's going to be really hot too, so they probably are not going to want rugs on either.
here's another, sorry, have you finished
Right.
answering one?
Yeah.
Yep. What is the latest thought on identification of your horse if left unattended?
Yeah, so the only reliable source of identifying your horse, obviously, is a microchip. Brands are the next next best thing. It depends on the situation, and Emma and I spoke about this. Riding on your horse, riding on the side of your horse in stock markers is definitely an option, especially in flooding. The only thing is stock markers are most normally grease based. So they are more flammable than the horse's hair. And what might end up happening is in a fire, you might end up that part of the grease-based hair has melted or burnt. The other option is a chalk-based stock marker on the horse. But again, chalk-based is obviously able to be washed off. So microchipping is really the only reliable source, but it's completely harmless and might save you a lot of heartache if you draw on chalk in your horse, and someone sees that number and calls you and says, "Hey, I found your horses, they're fine." Which I have done before. I've used Facebook before actually to find owners when I was in the fire ground. Numbers are really handy, but it's really hard. There is another option. Some people, another company, which I haven't vetted, have made a fire resistant, like a cattle tag, because cattle tags obviously aren't fire rated, but they've made a fire resistant version of that to put in their mains. I'm not advocating for any brands, but that is another thing that you could look at. It just depends how risk adverse you are too. If you go, okay, they've got some singed hair, I'd rather someone could call me, that's up to you. But yeah, it is grease is a risk. I wouldn't waste my time riding on their feet. No one's going to see it. And someone might get injured if they do happen to see it and they go looking for your phone number. That's one I wouldn't worry about.
Mm. A question from Kerry. Are electric fences a danger in fire? Are they worth turning off if you're leaving your horses, if your horses respect fences?
Yes, absolutely. On hot, windy days, electric fences have caused and started fires, not just have, like regularly do. Yeah, definitely turn them off. Really hard with stallions. Obviously making maybe making the fences as safe as we possibly can, or making the electric fence as safe as we possibly can. But yeah, they're definitely a fire hazard. And we definitely recommend turning them off.
Hmm. This is a good question. Probably would require longer than what we've got left, but we'll give it a go from Phyllis on event risk management if a fire threatens during an event with large numbers of horses.
Yeah. Um, that is a loaded question. To answer that question, I would say that we really need to be hyper aware initially of the fire danger rating for the day. We need to be cancelling all events on definitely on catastrophic days. On extreme days, we really don't want to be at events. It's so event dependent. It's so fire dependent. It's would sort of be up to a risk assessment of your own situation. Are you on Mount Macedon at Macedon Pony Club or Woodend Pony Club in the middle of the bush? Then I would be saying people need to leave. They need to leave as soon as they can. If you're at Tullamarine Pony Club, where you're out near the airport, you're in the open, you'd rather people stay there. So it's just so dependent on the situation. That one's really loaded. But being hyper aware initially of the fire danger ratings and not being scared to cancel events in those circumstances to keep everyone safe.
And I suppose a lot of your point today has been to make sure you don't get caught in a dangerous situation, but it can happen. Isabella has asked, if you do get caught out in a fire with your horse, what is the recommended course of action?
Finding those places of last resort. So if you can go to the place with the lowest amount of fuel, the shortest part of the paddock, I would highly suggest letting your horse go and do what you need to do to stay safe. Highly suggest letting them go. I never want you to let a horse go off your property, but if it's between you and the horse, let them go do their own thing, and you find somewhere to shelter, because you're not going to be able to withstand the heat that they can stand. So you're looking for the barest bit of earth. If it's a dry dam, if it's something you can shelter behind, even like a loose box in the paddock, that's going to provide you more shelter from radiant heat. Yeah, you're just looking for a body of water if you can, a car if you can, in a in a eaten out paddock. And yeah, really not being involved with a horse when the fire front comes through, if that's possible. So, yeah, there's no safe option there
though. What else? Alia, I think, asks, is 1.5 acres enough for one horse to be self-sufficient in an emergency?
Yeah, like that's a pretty good size. I think that's a pretty good size, as long as they've got hay and they've got good water and it's, a reasonable shaped paddock. I'm just thinking, like, I think my paddock is about 2 acres and it's got 3 horses in it. Just enough room for them to run, to them to feel like they're getting some distance, and then to get some distance running back the other way. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we've probably got time for one more.
I am happy to type out questions or answer questions for however long that they take. That's not a worry for me.
All right, we'll keep going for a bit longer then, because they're still coming
It's
through.
totally up to you, Emma. It's totally up to you. I'm happy.
Oh, so Esther's just asked for clarification with let them go. Does that mean leave them in their paddock or open the gates? I think we were talking about if
you're stuck with your horses.
Yeah.
If you've got a paddock that's prepared, that would be the best option, to just let them go in their paddock. 100%. If your property is not prepared, they're still, if you're on your property and you can lock them in, they're still better off on your property, because out on the roads, fire trucks, people evacuating. Yeah, so if on your property is an option, then that's the best option.
Because Phyllis has asked a question that relates to that. Are you responsible for any damage caused by your horse if you let it go on roads, etc., with vehicles and fire truck movement?
Yes, 100%. If you intentionally let them go, you are responsible. There is a clause in the law that if your fence burns down, did you take reasonable precautions to prevent it from burning down? And I can see arguments on both sides of the fence. So, if a tree comes down on your fence and your horses get out, it's an argument, but you can say, I'm not liable because I couldn't foresee the fence coming down. If you live in Australia and you say, I didn't think a bushfire was going to happen, or I didn't think a grass fire was going to happen, they would say, well, you live in Australia, so you should know that. There's arguments for both sides. If you intentionally let them go, yes, you're absolutely liable. It's a real legal fine line to walk if a fence came down in a fire. And hopefully they would rule in your favor that it was an emergency situation and you did the best you could. If you turn around and said, I managed to fuel around my fences, I had a fire plan, I did everything I could, then you're doing a really good job of covering yourself in that situation.
Cool. An anonymous question is, when should we start checking fire ratings every day? When does the fire risk to horses and property start and end?
Used to be when the fire danger period was declared. And that's what happens in Victoria, and I assume it happens everywhere else around Australia. But again, the weather's changing, and I've been to fires in spring that have threatened lives. So maybe prior to the fire danger period, if you're just looking at the weather, and everyone's looking at the weather, we want to know what rugs to put on. We want to know if we're going rugs off, rugs on, rugs off, rugs on. If you see warm and you see windy, you need to be aware of what's going
on. Jen has asked if your property is tree ridden, where would your horse go? I
Yeah.
think she means she's got a heavily treed
Yeah.
property. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's something I didn't cover. So bushfires and grass fires, yeah, same sort of thing, but a grass fire is something that a horse can be resilient to. The intense heat from a severe bushfire is something no one could withstand. Just the heat. You don't even have to get near the flames. It's the heat that does it for you, and the lack of oxygen. If your property is heavily treed, my solutions, and I nearly bought a block that was heavily treed, was to move my horses over summer, or you need to be really hyper aware of every high fire danger day and move them. And that's really taxing too. So that's really, your fire plan really needs to be achievable for you, so that you keep doing it. So that can be really taxing. But heavily treed areas, if it's burning like on an extreme or a catastrophic day, are going to be really, really dangerous. So you ideally want to move to grassland, move into town, but you don't want to be in heavy bush. And I'm sorry, there's no easy answer there, because it's just on extreme or catastrophic days, there's just no safe option of being there.
Getting back to securing tails and feathers,
Yep.
Charlotte has asked if vet wrap is okay or is it too flammable?
Yeah, so vet wrap's really flammable. As you can imagine, it's like a plasticky whatever, and it's just going to melt. And I know I don't have horses with feathers, but I know they're really important. They're really pretty. Everyone's really particular about them. It's just up to you as to how risk adverse you are. So we say, we want people to enact their fire plans every day of high fire danger, but 90% of those days, a fire is not going to come to your house. If you decide that you're going to take that risk, but if a fire starts 2 k's away and you're under evacuation warning, you go out there and you shave all their feathers off, that might be the amount of risk adverse that you are. Vet wrap's not going to work. It's up to you how risk adverse you are. If my horses aren't showing or they're not competing, their tails are short, their hair is short, and I don't care what they look like for summer. If you really care, it's totally your decision. But they do pose a higher risk, and there's no easy answer without saying shave their feathers off for summer.
Cool. We might make this our last one. It's another anonymous question. How many meters is an effective fire break for a horse's paddock?
So it depends on the fuels around you. 3 meters would be your absolute minimum. 3 meters of ploughed ground or eaten out to bare would be your minimum. Any fire break is going to knock the heat and the intensity out of the fire. And what it's going to do, so it's going to be coming raging up in the long grass. It's going to have to hit this lower intensity fire, and it's going to slow down a little bit. And then if it gets into more grass again, it's got to start getting its speed up again. So any break is going to help. A minimum of 3 meters of ploughed ground would be effective. I do 10 meters around my hay paddock. Old farmers used to do entire paddocks, like they would do on huge properties. They would do entire paddocks for fire breaks to really knock the heat out of it and to stop it from spreading, because grass fires don't spot very far, so they can't transverse over large fire breaks without trees or something to spot them. But yeah, minimum of 3 meters. It just depends again how risk adverse you are.
Cool. Thank you. Well, we've had a number of comments saying how great this has been, and can we do another one where we can go through the rest of your slides and do and another
Yeah,
one where we talk
absolutely can do.
about the post emergency, what to do in the aftermath.
Yeah,
So we will have to definitely look into that and see what we can schedule. But thank you so much, Amelia, for sharing all your experience and expertise with us tonight. And thank you to everyone who's joined us and sent us in some really, really thoughtful questions.
yeah.
Um, so remember, after the webinar, we will send out a flyer for you. It'll come out tomorrow with a link to this recording. We'll put it on our YouTube channel in case you want to over anything again or share it with any of your contacts. So these flyer will have links to state and territory resources, so you'll know exactly where you go. You'll have the information at your fingertips to help you keep building your emergency plan. So yeah, at Pony Club Australia, obviously our priority is the safety and well-being of both riders and horses, and being prepared is just such an important an important part of that. I really hope tonight has given you the confidence and practical tools to take the next step in your own planning. So on behalf of PCA, thank you again for being here. Stay safe, look after each other, and give your horses an extra big pat from us. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
Amelia.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye.